involved in getting involved is access to BA resources, the discounts and opportunities for certification and exam fees, and obviously the networking as well. So and we're active on social media. So we'll send this pack out after today's event so that you can link into to our LinkedIn or Instagram or YouTube, and we're constantly trying to create some valuable content in that space. And one of the things that within the UK we're working hard to do is trying to get some more sort of bite-sized YouTube content out there as the year progresses. And finally, most importantly, something I'm really passionate about, I volunteer myself, but we're keen to encourage more within our existing member community, but also new members to take advantage of working within the community and really working to give back and to get involved in some of the exciting things that we get involved with. And then Watch, I was going to hand over to you just to give a little bit of an overview of today's session, if that's okay.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Paul. And welcome once again to all attendees and panelists as well. The AI Insights series was essentially created to explore how artificial intelligence is not only impacting or reshaping the use of our tools, but also our thinking as business analysts and as leaders. So we wanted to create a space where we could go beyond the hype and ask some real questions, ask questions that border on outcomes. So that's what it's all about. So this is about bringing together industry leaders, practitioners, professionals, a space for us to have this conversation and for you to ask questions as well. So today we're looking at the changing face of business analysis. What does it mean? What does AI mean? What's the impact of AI, within that, and spreading that beyond that. I'm also looking at how to build, or what are the future ready capabilities and skill sets we need to be looking at. What are the risks? What are the things that we need to be looking in terms of framework and all of that? So all of this, we hope to sort of touch on, in this brief moment that we have together. And Paul, we've had a number of conversations together around this, and looks like it's going to be a great conversation tonight, isn't it?
Good. I'm looking forward to it, and I'll stop sharing and introduce you to our panelists. So we've got Christina Tand, who's our UK IIBA president and a consultant in transformation. So hi, Christina. We've got Gary Lloyd, recognised author, and joining us with a slightly different perspective, but a systems thinking perspective, and really keen to explore his ideas. We've got Bindu Chana Verapa. That's it. I always struggle with that, but I've been practicing all afternoon, Bindu. You'll be pleased to hear. And finally, I've got it correct. And Bindu has been active within the IIBA space for some years and actively supports all the chapters in really driving towards excellence. I think that's probably a good way of describing what you do for us, Bindu. And yeah, you provide the support and that connection between all the chapters across Europe. And finally, last but not least, Kitty Hung, #1 Amazon author. Just really excited to hear what you have to say about AI and some of the exciting things that are happening within that space today. So on to the first question, and really, what do you guys see as the main impact on business analysis from an AI perspective? Christina.
So, hi everyone. So from my perspective, so AI sort of means two things for sort of business analysts. So firstly, efficiency in the mechanics of the kind of documentation outputs that we produce. But and also on the other side of the coin, it's the elevation of our profession and through that human side of our role. So in other words, it kind of frees us up from the traditional repetitive aspects of our roles. In that sense, you can say that our profession has really started evolving in that area, and is focusing more towards the strategic. So sort of whilst we are sort of less involved potentially with documentation, we can then start to kind of shift that focus towards how we can help organizations shape decisions and kind of guide organizations through change. So it's about redefining how we deliver that value. So that is position BA is not on the sidelines of AI adoption, but kind of right at the center of it.
Yeah. And Bindu, from your perspective, how are you seeing AI, and what it means to the business analysis community?
Thank you, Paul, for the introduction. And this is a brilliant question. Yes, I've been a business analysis consultant all my life. Yeah, thanks for the introduction. You just shared my part-time job, not the full-time job. But the reason I'm sharing that is today, everything that I think I do, or most part of the work I do, is with AI. The way I see AI is something, in fact, the very first time I was exposed to AI was in 2019. So the project was in two phases. First phase was the RPA part, and the second was the AI. So the way AI has kind of evolved, my understanding over the period is completely changed to what I had, like with everybody else. So whenever I hear people talking about AI, it's like I always remember the story of the blind man and the elephant. I don't know if you have heard it. So here the blind men are just touching and feeling the elephant parts, and they are actually explaining how the elephant is. So one blind man will touch the legs and say, oh, it's like this pillar, and the other one touches, it's like the tail, and it's like a fan, the ear or the trunk, whatever it is. So each of us come from our own experience because we are all learning. And I think in one of the interviews or podcasts where I can't remember, it was a very beautiful explanation that we are all flying in this aircraft as we build the aircraft. And that's exactly is AI. And of course, like with any other tool, because this is a tool, all of us, although we have different perspectives, it is a tool, but a very, very powerful tool. And like with any other tools, we BAs are adapting to it, and I definitely have adapted to it. And I mean, of course, there are a lot of conversations, good, bad, and ugly around it. In my opinion, I think it is a very, very wonderful, powerful tool, one of the most or the best so far as humanity. We have kind of brought it together. But the challenge with that is, I don't know if we are equally prepared for it. So that's exactly my perspective here to bring to the table for this conversation. But it is something that all of us need to explore it more further.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah,
I mean,
I like if I may just jump in, Paul. I like the metaphor that Bindu actually brought in, the blind man and the elephant metaphor. And that kind of brings me to want to just quickly ask Gary, Gary, from, a systems perspective, because you're an author, and you've spoken so much about, systems thinking. So from that perspective, how do we begin to approach AI, and how do we as business analysts and leaders help organizations adopt AI meaningfully, by connecting all the dots?
I think there's the question is there's kind of two levels to this. There's the work that BAs analyze, and there's the way that BAs work. So AI applies to both of those things. And from my point of view, that I see a huge amount of money being wasted worrying about augmentation and automation. And I think that the real change that AI brings is how needs are met by the ecosystem of work. I see the world of work as an ecosystem, not as a production line. So I think that there's an opportunity when looking at what needs are, and I'll explain what I mean by needs, asking how could we meet these needs differently. You know, when I was a kid, my mum used to queue up, go into the bank to get cash to go and buy groceries in the market. And then you could get cash without going into a bank. You could get it through an ATM at a petrol station. And now, of course, if we want to go shopping, we can go to the supermarket with our phone and use our phone. Or you can do what's about to happen here, which is you can get your groceries delivered. So the question to ask is not about what tasks can we automate or augment. I think it's the need wasn't cash. The need was never cash. The need was food, or the ability to buy food. So I think that BAs have the skill to understand, to be interpreters rather than translators. You know, to really look at the system to understand what the needs are of customers, what their existing needs are, what their real needs are, digging down into that, what their unmet needs are, or what new needs they may have. And my last thing on this is I'll say is that there are two things that really change the game, I think. One is that if you think about the parts of an ecosystem, coordination between those parts of an ecosystem used to require standards. But AI is actually very good at taking unstructured data and presenting it in a form that another part of the ecosystem can understand. And that really changes. So David Graeber, the anthropologist, wrote a book about bullshit jobs, what he called bullshit jobs. And, you know, there's no point automating bullshit jobs or jobs that support bullshit jobs. And the other thing is that there have never been better tools for fast prototyping. Now, BAs potentially, if they don't wait to be asked to do some of those things, and measurement is another thing that we hear about, which is because people are going into projects without well-structured goals in the first place about the difference it's going to make. They're just tossing the stuff out there. So, sorry, that was a long-winded answer, but it was really saying that needs and ecosystems, they're my main messages.
No, it's interesting, Gary. I mean, I use AI in play. So, like you talk about prototyping, I think AI. Yeah, I'm interested to hear from the panel about you know, in the future of business analysis as we talk about it, where does AI fit in terms of that innovation and the how to accelerate some of those things that you might want to think about.
Yeah, I mean, Paul, just also just chipping in on what you just talked about. I think it's based on the research. There's about just about 10 to 15% of organizations that are actually deriving meaningful return on investment in AI. And you know, you talked about, you know, the AI application, and the research also highlights, you know, that most organizations struggle when they move from prototyping to production. So, you know, just to sort of highlight this question that Gary might want to help us unpack. What is it, Gary, that we, and obviously this presents an opportunity there for business analysts. So Gary, in a few words, what do you think are the key things that, you know, business analysts and leaders need to do to be able to, you know, bridge that gap and help organizations transit from just prototyping to production?
Well, I think the first thing is to describe the world in terms of an ecosystem. I expect to see parts of an ecosystem with feedback loops and arrows between them. So understand the big picture. In terms of prototyping, I think the mistake that people often make with prototyping is that they try to prototype the whole thing. I was having this conversation before we came on. If I was inventing a new shovel, I might just want to prototype the handle and see how well the handle works and get that in front of the customer and say, how does that feel? So you prototype different bits of it. And there are just, every day there's a new tool for, the term has become vibe coding. We probably all hate it, but it's become vibe coding. But there are loads of tools out there. I built something to allow a flight simulator for leadership skills called the Leadership Skills Lab, and I built that using something called Bubble. And so some of the tools, some of the prototyping tools are just for prototyping. I think they get you as far as a prototype. That's as far as they get you. Bubble, which is a no-code platform, would take you fully through into production. But I think the prototyping is about, I've got a bit of a background in design thinking. The prototyping is about doing experiments to find out what works and what doesn't work.
Yeah.
And I think experiment is a really important word, because an experiment is something you do to find out information. It's not to prove that something works.
I mean, linking that back to what Bindu said about the AI being a tool as well. Do you, as a panel, do you? I'm really keen to, like, you talk about the practical applications today. Is it the speed at which it's changing that, like, is causing people to think about, how work and the world of work will change, or is it something else? Is that, is it the different ways that teams are making use of it? And just keen to sort of push you a little bit on that. Maybe Kitty, keen to hear from you.
Yeah, it's my observation. I found that many people, including business analysts, they see a new toy, they just dive in to use it. But I have to bring them back and say, learn about AI literacy, learn about what AI is about, what makes up AI, machine learning, reinforcement learning, deep learning, neural network, okay? And then learn about the technique of prompt engineering. Because if you just dive down to use the tool without learning what AI is about, it's counterintuitive. And I think a lot of BAs in this industry, they are making a huge mistake. They just do it. They just pick up the tool and then they just try it out. But no, they have to learn about what's AI. I'm not saying they have to go back to the university to get a computer, like data science or machine learning degree, but they need to know what AI is about, what is hallucination, what is the limitation, and what about in those area, what about the cybersecurity? We need to be careful. They just download all the apps from their phone and then they just try using it. But some of the apps may be scamming.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I think, Paul, I see a lot of lazy thinking going on.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is that people will ask an AI, a generative AI, a large language model, for the information. Whereas the best way to use it is to go off, do some research yourself, get your own thoughts together, and then have a conversation with the large language model as a partner in trying to structure up your thinking, you having already thought it through, and then it really, really adds some value. But I see a lot of people, let's face it, people are short of time, and they'll just go, if I wanted to design a training course, for example, I could say to go to use a large language model and say, design me a training course on giving feedback, for example. I'm going to create, or a simulation on giving feedback. This is something I've actually done. But a better way of doing that is getting all your own thoughts together, doing some research yourself, and then having the conversation. And I think the same is true if somebody's analysing a business, in my terms, a business need or something that delivers value, is to understand that before you even open up whatever your preferred chatbot is.
Yeah, I mean
I like that.
Yeah, so yeah, I mean, I was just going to say, I mean, that's quite a light bulb moment. Have you, like other panel members, have you had like equivalent sort of light bulb moments with AI, and how we might use it more effectively?
Yeah, so I definitely from a sort of productivity perspective, definitely agree with Gary's points there around. So I suppose, putting that human element into sort of what we do, and also sort of create that structured thinking. So I tend to use AI tools like Notion or sort of Claude, which allows us to I suppose store the relevant context from which we're drawing from, so that we can start to derive some really useful, accurate responses from sort of really specific questions that we're trying to get out, and then putting that element, a human element, back in again. So it's really a blend of AI and human thoughts into a quality response as outputs for work. So yeah, but I can totally understand sort of how easy it is to kind of skip or bypass that stage entirely.
Yeah,
I mean, Paul, sorry, just to pick up just very briefly on Christina's point, which is that the answers you get out of the large language model are dependent on the quality of the questions you put in. And, a key skill that BA, from my perspective, a good BA, I'm not from that community, but a good skill that a BA would have would be framing questions, reframing questions. It's like going to the doctor. How often is the presented problem actually different to the actual problem? And that's where, back to lazy thinking, understanding how to think critically and ask good questions is a really, really key skill.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just thinking, it's a really good point, Gary. And one thing that worries me, and like, so we talk about practical applications today, like organizations are buying AI solutions from people. How do we know what we're buying? So everything you see in marketing is being received with AI augmented to the front of it. Look at our new AI CRM. Look at our new AI dashboard on our car. Look at AI embedded in, I don't know, our voice handling for our customers. But how do we know what we're buying in those practical applications? I'd be interested, to hear about that, Kitty.
There's one interesting thing. I have to jump in here. I know you did ask
me.
No,
of course, jump in anytime.
I think I shared this at a few days back in the IIBA podcast as well. In one of the recent conferences, there was a section presented on the failures of AI. So the research, can you just guess? Again, I'm asking for the panelists and probably even the attendees. What's the percentage of failure AI project that has failed over the last few years? Can anybody take a guess?
Quite high.
It depends on where you get. Depends on where you get.
80%.
70-80%
or thereabout.
There was an MIT
75%, 90%.
Yeah, whoever said 90%, probably, is the closest. I think the research data mentioned around 94 or 95% of projects that's failed. And that pretty much sums it up what the panel was discussing in the last few minutes. Is as a BA, we need to first of all understand, is this new shiny gadget, is it really suitable? Is it serving our purpose? What's the business objective that we are actually trying to achieve? And then to what Gary was sharing and to what Kitty was sharing is to understand what the tool itself is. Rather than just like, I think as BAs, we learn new tools. There are, I think, probably if you look at the BA tools and techniques, 50, 100, 123. There are different numbers from different schools of thoughts, that we have so many techniques and tools that we have as BAs we can use. So similarly, today we have another very powerful tool. So understanding what the tool does and how we can, again, there are two layers to it, how this tool can help us as a BA at a day-to-day work. And is it really solving the problem? Or if we find a solution, is it really solving the problem that as an organization or as a project that we are addressing? So just to briefly respond to the part, as a BA, is it really helping me to get into the details of how I can use it, how efficiently? So I think one of the things that has really helped me to understand this aspect is, having somebody on my team to help me. So having an assistant who is very efficient, who knows all the knowledge that out there in the world, but is only dependent on the questions I ask, which is, again, Gary mentioned that it's the quality of the questions. And I think as BAs, we do have that skill. So again, I'm touching about a few things here. The light bulb movement, what you were talking again. So one of, like with everybody, I was experimenting and using the prompt as it was, until I learned that, like a BA, I have to give a context, I have to give a scope, I have to ask those right questions depending on what the answer I want. And that's exactly is what the prompt, it's not called a sentence, it's called an engineering for a purpose, because it is engineered. Whatever we are asking, we engineering it, and we are getting the answers that we want. So that's, again, one of the perspectives that we can use. And one of the biggest light bulb moment, and the practical example for me is, I was helping a client with the threat modeling for their systems. Again, I'm a BA, I'm not a technical expert, but however, I can highlight what are those threats, what are those risks, and what are those vulnerabilities. And today, there are more than, I think, nearly 60 cyber harm categories. And in that, every category, there could be risks, vulnerabilities, and threats. And we are talking about thousands here. So it is very inhumane for a human to actually go through that for every project scenario. But there, the AI can do the magic. But the BAs can be that human in the loop to kind of actually verify. And also, see, AI is there to give you and help you. But what I want from AI is still under my control as a BA. So that is the perspective. And similarly, again, when we are advising, because for our organizations, we are the trusted advisors. So similarly, like that, we have to do the similar analysis using this tool. And can this tool or can this technology really help to solve those business needs and bring that as part of our analysis so that the organization can make those conscious decisions? Today, everybody wants to kind of, go through that AI wave, because when you say AI, there's money. And when there's AI, there are more people attending the conferences. So again, how exactly are we really big? Because as I said, we are the trusted advisors, and our analysis is really trusted to make those business decisions, and that has to be accurate.
I mean, my question was one of, how do we know what we're buying if we don't know what it is? So that was where I was coming from. Because like organizations are making making decisions.
I think the other way I'd look at that to answer that question is not how do we know what we're buying, but to ask the question, what problem are we solving? And I think this is so. I think in terms of there's some open blue water here in the changing world that nobody's competing in. The skills have the BAs have the skills to compete in because there's no competition in that. One of those is thinking in terms of systems, thinking in terms of customer needs, and then rather than just throwing AI against the wall and seeing what sticks, to be the conscience and say, it's 30 years ago since we used to start every project with a balanced business scorecard. We used to have 4 quadrants, if people don't know of it, customer service, financial, staff, quality. And, I was doing some consulting recently, and they were talking about AI projects, and I said, well, you start off with your balanced business scorecard. You know, that's your conscience. You say you're going to start, let's baseline the performance of whatever problem we're trying to solve or whatever need we're trying to fulfill at the moment. Let's baseline that. Now let's run some prototypes and experiments to see whether the AI is actually making a dent in that. If not, let's not waste a lot of money doing that.
Yes, good. So we're kind of touching on ethics, trust, and adoption. So yeah, what good sort of partnership between sort of human judgment and AI? What does it look like, Kitty? What does good and good sort of augmentation of AI look like in an organization and in business analysis?
You don't over reliant on AI. That's the best way to use AI as a research assistant, research partner. Don't use it as a gospel. That's the thing. Anything turned out from the generative AI need to involve human oversight and decision loop to really validate that, verify that. I got questions about how BA can mitigate the AI biases. It sounds like to me, okay, it's not BA's community control, but we can challenge the status quo in the algorithm and data science, machine learning community. So my point is, don't over rely on AI. Always validate, verify, and question about what is useful and what is not.
Yeah, and have you got some good examples?
Paul,
sorry, go on.
I was just going to quickly ask Bindu, because it's out there that less than 6% of organizations have dedicated AI ethics and governance teams. And clearly this represents a huge gap, you know, between technical excellence and ethical excellence. So I wanted to ask Bindu, from a cybersecurity, standpoint, what that means for BAs and how we can begin to close this gap and embed it in organizations.
You mean the ethical gap?
Yes, the governance gap, because clearly there is, a governance gap.
Yeah. I think when it comes to governance, the approach, I think today when we hear the discussions around AI governance, it's all about, okay, AI is doing this, how do we actually kind of reinforce it? But the way I see it is like, as a parent, governing the child, we shouldn't be saying or asking the question, what can AI do? But instead, we should be saying what AI should do or should not do. And that is where I think the boundaries can be laid out. Because as a child, the child can do a lot of things. But we as a parent, because we understand why the child has to do something or the why child should not do something. So if you look at AI, it's nothing but a mirror. It's a mirror to the human consciousness, because all our information, all the data that has come from us is actually gone into it. Or maybe we could call it as an amplified mirror, because it really amplifies everything with its intelligence. So it's very important that we understand very clearly, like setting that context, what is the problem it is solving and what are the expected outcomes. So by setting that boundaries, specifically what AI should be doing or AI shouldn't be doing. So if it is doing a lot of data analysis, that is fine, but can it take a decision which is based on ethical perspective? So again, I think a very, very common example that we hear everywhere is a loan decision. So if an AI accepts or agrees for a loan to be approved, or it rejects or declines, do we really clearly understand the basis of that? So those are some of the things that we need to, as an organization, we need to understand. And specifically from a BA perspective, because I always say that if a BA is not including the security requirements from a security perspective, that means our analysis is incomplete, because today all our products, the value, the so-called, because we are value co-creators, the value that we create is dependent on this technology solution, which means that the counterpart, the other side of the coin, is the cybersecurity. So we just cannot co-create the value and not look into the security of it. So which means from an ethical perspective as well, we need to bring in how these decisions, or we should be able to really clearly understand what are those decisions based on, even if it is at an data level or algorithm level. And when we talk about the data level, that is huge, because AI's engine is data. AI can only operate when there is data. If there is no data, AI doesn't work. So understanding the data hygiene is very important. But that again, is it a BA's job or is it not a BA's job? That's debatable depending on the context and the project that we are working. But as part of the BA work itself, when it comes to the governance, looking at data quality, the data lineage, and if there are concerns, yes, as a BA, we have to raise that, because they are the parts of those governance as well.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Do you see, like, I'd be interested to know, like, from the panel and people on the call, I expect if someone's going to present me with some data or some information and it's been generated by AI, I would expect to see it powered by or generated by AI as clearly labeled. But is that happening? Is there a standard for that? I'm interested to know, what people are doing to surface that open and transparent use of AI, because it kind of links to that decision-making
So,
model for a risk in a bank that you're suggesting, Bindu. So Kitty.
so Paul, this is my book cover, and I good at acknowledgement for Dell E3.
Yeah.
Dell E3. So I'm very transparent. And inside in the acknowledgement, I said I used to use Grammarly, but after the generative AI, I use generative AI to correct my grammar and my spelling. So I need to be transparent, because it's actually my book is to encourage more people to use AI. And that's why some of my readers, they bought my book because they like the cover. And I said it cost me nothing, because I use Dell E3, and I put the credit in the middle to say to people, I use it, and by all means try it out.
And is that how
Also,
you?
Kitty,
Sorry,
Yeah.
go.
Transparency
sorry.
is
What?
better than opaqueness.
Can I just add one thing? Sorry, to
yes,
that
please.
example.
Yeah.
I think, Paul, you raised a good point by saying, there should be somewhere that mention that the data has come from any of those models. But the question here is the job just about mentioning it, or is the job about making sure that the data that is shown is accurate?
Yeah, I mentioned two things in my statement. One was like acknowledging it and surfacing it, so being transparent, and the other was standards. So is a standard that it's been reviewed by a human? Is it like to your, I think to your point, has it had a second pair of eyes over the output?
Because end of the day, if we are putting out of some value, again, it is just, we just cannot say that, okay, it is not by a human or it is not by whoever it is, because whoever is printing it will have a certain responsibility underneath. That is what I was trying to bring to the conversation.
No, that's good. It's good. What? Sorry, Watch. We cut over you. Sorry.
I was quite keen to know from both Kitty and Bindu. Traditional governance essentially emphasized compliance, but with AI, it then seems that there are a few more layers that need to come in, which include trust, agility. So I'm keen to know how what framework that, business analysts and leaders can sort of begin to embed to ensure full traceability end to end, from a governance standpoint.
For me, anything I quote, we need to provide the source, the data source. So citation is one of the things that when we produce documentation, we have some idea, okay, this idea comes from that news article, that news clip, and that source, that website. So my suggestion is always include citation for anything you produce, a statement or a document, a piece of information, citation.
Okay. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I think, again, depending on the context and what exactly we are using AI for, a BA should be very clearly able to articulate, again, if it is more technical in nature, into converting that into a business language, that how are those decisions made. I think that is very, very important. If it is a decision making utility that we are using, and the most important is the data, because that's the engine of it. And when I say data hygiene, biases also are part of it, because as humans we have to accept the fact that our thinking is biased. I think again, we were just having some conversations before the panel, underlying assumptions. So that is again one of the biases, and among many others. So that is something I think we have to understand and accept, if that is the case, and see how we can address that in our decisions. And I think at a simple part, at a very, very low level, if not anything, we can be, or we should be, the human in the loop. Really clearly define when AI insights need approval, whether it is for compliance or a managerial, when it should go, or when it can be accepted. So basically trying to make sure that those decisions that are coming out of AI is something that we can trust on. Again, behind that there's a lot of testing, and behind that there's a lot of prototyping, all of that work as a BA that goes into it. But we should be like with any other algorithm or the logic, I'm not talking about the coding, but in terms of the business logic, we need to have clear understanding of how these AIs models are actually using the data, hygiene of the data, and what outcome that it is going to generate, and what is it based on.
It's
Awesome.
interesting, isn't it? Because
I think, I like that, because it speaks to sort of embedding explainability requirements early on, before you take off. Yeah. Sorry, Paul.
No, it's fine. Exactly what you say. All of these things that you mentioned, I think we've been doing for years. And actually, these just to bring it back to your point. This is just a new set of tools. In the early 90s, we as an industry, the BAs were grappling with e-commerce and new tools to take payments. In the early 2000s, we were looking at omni-channel and how we can get better understanding of the tools that were providing the ability for businesses to change. Then AlphaGo came along, which changed everything, didn't it? And suddenly a machine could beat a human at a game, and we're now in a different world. And is this governance game that we're talking about, all these things that take away the tool we should all be doing anyhow. We were all taught at university to reference anyone that we're quoting in our thesis, and make sure our referencing is present and correct. That's no different now. We apply the tool. Is the speed at which we're changing, is that what's really scary? For me, it's really scary. Not that I'm afraid of change, just that, are we forgetting some of those things because we're putting tools in the hands of people that perhaps aren't following the same governance, ethics, trust models that that we're interesting. Just discuss.
You brought out a very specific or a very important aspect, Paul. It is something like, as I was mentioning in the beginning, it's a very powerful tool, but as a humanity, are we ready or not? Is the question. We definitely are not prepared for it because we are just trying to use it in so many different ways, good and bad, and we are based on that outcome. We are learning, or we are just flying, building this aircraft. So definitely there is a huge risk. And also the point that you made is also true, that as we are changing, as the world is changing, we have to adapt to it. That is given, and the change or the speed is the byproduct of it, because we have a powerful tool which is so efficient, hence the speed. Yes, it is scary, but at the same time, like with anything, looking back my 20 years BA career, every time there was a change, I have to adapt. So yes, it is this time again, there is adapting, but as with the changing times, the pace is also picking up. Yes, all of us, I think, as BAs, we will be working with AI, no matter whether we like it or we don't like it. But I think if you can experiment it, because as I said, from in the last 5 years, there were moments where AI really surprised me, AI scared me, AI gave me different understanding, different emotions with that. But I think today I'm in an understanding that it is a very powerful tool, like any other tool. It's only as good as how cleverly I can use it. So
Yep.
again, bringing that human aspect back, as Christina was talking about, as humans, how capable are we in decision making? How capable are we with our creativity and mental aspects?
Yep.
How is our intuition? How we are in tune with it? Because it can help you tremendously, incredibly well, as creative as our inputs are. So yes.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
that's
like
good.
that you touched on the speed, talked about the speed of that. And I was keen to also ask Christina, there was a report by Deloitte in 2024 that cited just about 28% of leaders feel confident, to sort of adopt AI. And that speaks to a leadership confidence gap. So I was keen to sort of speak with, ask Christina, because you've been championing this conversation. What mindset shifts do leaders need to make, and BAs as well, to sort of keep pace with with innovation?
Yeah, I think that's a really sort of good question. I'll probably say sort of with a lot of the organization leaders, I think sort of the primary sort of I guess a pull factor for AI adoption initially, and I'm sure most of us here might have kind of heard some news headlines around sort of job cuts, which might seem kind of doom and gloom in some areas, although there are AI driven roles bringing up to that kind of resembles on a whole kind of a net positive in terms of job creation. But initially, I suppose, kind of stem from operational efficiency gains from sort of adoption, AI adoption that that could lead to sort of well, sort of these efficiencies. But I guess one thing that doesn't get spoken about as much, sort of that's probably in tiny letters and probably not until you speak to some of the leaders, is actually the organization does go through a bit of initial change with getting back to what Kitty said earlier, AI literacy, upskilling people to actually use AI responsibly, in order to develop sort of smarter ways of working. And I suppose from that point on, it's sort of from that sort of lived experience of AI adoption, it then sort of empowers them with all that knowledge to then sort of identify ways of essentially look at ways of adding values. So there are some talks from sort of early in sort of back in September's IRM conference around totally sort of new ways that BAs could get involved. I would say it's really kind of that sign of innovation of BAs getting involved with data scientists. You don't have to be data scientists, but they can get involved with sort of feature stores and feature models. They could also go and sort of use certain accumulated knowledge around agentic AI to look at sort of revenue operations, which is totally, if you think about a few years back, it's almost unheard of for BAs to be involved in that area directly, being at the core of growing and scaling companies. So I definitely see that journey itself. It sort of enables the likes of BAs to shift towards that more strategic, almost entrepreneurial type mindset, working alongside business leaders.
Yeah. And do you see that AI adoption for business analysis differing across industries and regions as a team? Like Christina, do you see different adoption cycles for different industries and regions?
Yeah, I would say so. So definitely there's no one size fits all. So I would say in highly regulated sectors like finance, healthcare, adoption tends to be, I would say on the whole, a bit more cautious and compliance driven. I suppose this comes from direct experiences with my transformation background and recently kind of working in public healthcare. Definitely really cautious, even no-go areas in certain parts of the organization versus some other areas. There are pockets of opportunities available. And when those opportunities are available, we need to make sure that we are sort of adopting AI in the best light to always create that showcase that yes, it's and be like and so if we really kind of articulate about its benefits so that we these doors can open up in other parts of the business, as long as the real guards around the ethics and governance are in place.
Yeah. How about you, Bindi? Are you seeing different cycles of adoption in different industries, different regions? Because obviously in your part-time role, you see some of the other chapters around Europe. I'm just interested to see where other regions might be in terms of this conversation.
I think every there is again a curve that is happening, and all of us are on that curve at different points. Again, if you take the BA community as well, some of us have kind of embraced it sooner, while some of us are still contemplating, again, depending on the environment that they are. If there is for example, in my case, I happen to bump into or happen to land to work in a project in 2019. And again, coming from a very technical background, it's always curious for me to kind of get into it. And once I started experimenting. And I started educating because that's again part of the role. We are all constant learners. So I took that active journey because throughout as a consultant, that's exactly what I have to, again, always try to stay ahead in the game, being a consultant. So that really enabled me. That doesn't mean that as an individual or as a BA whose organization he's kind of a slow or on a slow adaptation cycle, probably the BA working there might not have the same reasons to kind of take that move. But nevertheless, we all have to adapt.
Yeah.
And yes, I think talking about job cuts and all that, which Christina was sharing, one thing which I have realized, and also again, there's a lot of information and data for that, is that we won't be replaced by AI or the robots or whatever the machines, but we will definitely be replaced with those people who can adapt to AI and who can use AI, because like with anything, laptop, phone, internet, AI is the new tool. And each and every one, whether it is at a personal level, organization, BA or non-BA, doesn't matter. And that's exactly where the world is going. We all have to embrace it one way or the other. So let's have that positive aspect towards that it is helping us.
Watch, I think you had something.
Yeah, I just wanted to chip in, Paul. There's a question here. We have a question here in the chat. It says, due to the breadth of the profession, the day-to-day work done by business analysts may differ. It then says, what will be the strategy adopted to identify the use cases that best suits one's needs? I think that kind of speaks to what you just touched on, Bindu, you know, the strategy, what adoption should look like and how to navigate that path.
Sorry, there are many other questions as well.
Does any panelists have any thoughts around any additional thoughts as we begin to wrap up?
Just before the responses, there are many other questions. So if the attendees want to reach out to us individually on LinkedIn or maybe through you, Watch, I don't know, however, because there are so many good questions and they are
I mean, I was looking at this and yeah, there's a lot. I think, you know, it may even warrant when we go back to the attendees, we'll collect up those questions and try and give some answers back. But also, I think the demand, we've had nearly 50 people constantly through today's session, so clearly Watch, yeah, let's ask the attendees, are there any specific subject areas that they might want to drill down into a bit more detail? Maybe we could look at the themes of those questions as well. It's been really exciting. I had one final question just before we finish up, and I'll go round the panel. And Bindu, you've just touched on it really, because it was like, what's the if you could leave one sort of challenge or question for every BA listening, what would your reflection be? What would that be? If, you know, one piece of advice.
I think one which I have adapted personally as well is not to compete with the computers, but really go back and be that human and start looking at it from that perspective.
Kitty?
My advice to the BA is to don't overly rely on the output from the generative AI. Use your human oversight and decision loop. Use your human brain, human decision making to determine whether the output is relevant, fit for purpose, and useful to your business. AI can be very deceiving, perfect grammar, perfect spelling, and it looks very convincing, but it's totally CRAP sometimes.
Yeah, that's good. Excellent. And Gary and Christina, Gary, in that order. Correct, Gary. Yeah, just final thoughts.
Try and help your clients not to get trapped in augmentation and automation, but help them think in terms of ecosystems, and don't wait to be asked to do that. Be brave and step into the space, because nobody else is going to.
System thinking. And Christina.
So short one would be, don't just learn about AI, learn how to lead with it.
Brilliant. Well, that's been amazing. I was thinking about this before we started, just to wrap it up. So I touched on the story of, like, obviously the early 90s with the transformation into e-commerce, and early 2000s with omnichannel. Life is ever evolving. There'll always be change. These are new tools. Let's embrace them. I think that's, for me, I'm just starting to learn about these things, and yeah, I'm excited to hear what perspectives we've heard today. Really keen to hear more though, Watch. So it looks like you're going to be a busy BA, like creating a much broader community.
Thank you so much, Paul, and thanks to everyone for joining. And we'll keep the conversation going. Like Paul said, we're going to collect the questions and then we'll address them. And just keep an eye on social media. And thank you. Have a good evening.
Thank you, everyone, for giving your time, and thanks for the attendees. Thank you.
I really enjoyed it. Bye-bye. Good night,
Bye.
everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Lovely conversation. Bye for now.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.